Pam Bondi was mocked, dismissed, and dared to prove herself on stage. What happened next completely flipped the script, humbling everyone watching. It all went down during a podcast episode no one expected to go viral. The guest, Jackson Weller, an indie rock musician from Portland, known for his sharp tongue and progressive views, was in the middle of telling a story about performing at a fundraiser. When the host casually asked if he'd ever run into anyone from politics backstage, Jackson smirked, took a sip of his drink, and leaned into the microphone. Pam Bondi was at one of those events, he said. Nice lady, I guess. But come on, she looked at the grand piano like it was IKEA furniture. I doubt she could tell the middle C from a cup of coffee. The room erupted in laughter. It was a line that fit perfectly with his usual crowd, young, left-leaning, and skeptical of anyone with a political background. Jackson was known for these offhand jabs, and most people didn't take him too seriously. But this time, his words stuck. The clip went viral, spreading like wildfire across social media. The quote was clipped, looped, and turned into memes, circulating with captions like, "Jackson drags Pam Bondi with a musical burn," and "Pam, do you even know what a piano is?" Pam didn't respond. Not right away. Sitting in Tampa at her kitchen counter, she received the clip from her niece, accompanied by a laughing emoji. Pam watched it twice, but there was no visible reaction, no eye roll, no anger. She simply sighed, closed the video, and put her phone face down. Her tea had gone cold, but she didn't delete the clip. A week later, Jackson took another jab, this time during an interview with a Seattle-based online magazine. "I guess she's lawyer smart, sure, but I doubt she has a creative bone in her body," he said. "You can't fake art. Either you feel it, or you don't." This made things worse, shifting his comments from a light-hearted joke to something more personal. Some of his fans laughed it off, but others started to feel uncomfortable. Some older followers even commented, questioning whether it was necessary, asking him to just focus on music. Jackson didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't care. He was set to perform in Florida the next month anyway and assumed the controversy would blow over. What he didn't know was that Pam had been invited to the same high-profile charity event in Sarasota, a music and arts fundraiser for kids, the very same event Jackson had agreed to perform at. The event's lineup included local politicians, celebrities, philanthropists, and artists. Pam wasn't planning to take the stage. She was attending as a quiet donor, someone who preferred to stay in the background. She hadn't performed publicly in over 15 years, but something inside her began to shift. That week, she went into her guest room, removed the sheet covering her upright piano, and ran her fingers over the keys. The piano was out of tune and stiff with age, but she smiled to herself. She picked up her phone and called her old music instructor from law school. "Hey, Dan," she said. "Still tuning pianos?" Meanwhile, Jackson was still doing press, joking about Pam during a radio appearance in Clearwater. "Maybe she'll bring her sheet music," he laughed. "Who knows? Maybe she'll surprise us with chopsticks." He didn't know Pam had been practicing nearly every day. He didn't know she had already chosen the piece she'd play. And he certainly didn't know she had no intention of talking, just playing. As the night of the event drew nearer, Jackson didn't realize that Pam had been preparing for her return to the stage. For nearly 4 weeks, she practiced in private, her hands stiff at first, but gradually regaining their fluidity. She kept her session secret, just her, the piano, and a promise she hadn't even realized she'd made to herself all those years ago. The piece she chose wasn't random. It was the same one she hadn't finished playing on stage at 16, Debussy's * Claire de Lune star. As the event drew closer, Pam's name appeared on the guest list, but only as a donor. No public statements, no hint of anything unusual. Jackson didn't notice. He had his set list ready and a group of industry friends arriving. He assumed it would be a fun, easy night, a bit of press, some drinks, a few laughs, and applause. What he didn't know was that Pam wasn't coming for attention. She was coming for the music. The Ritz-Carlton Ballroom in Sarasota glittered under soft lighting, making everyone look their best. It was a charity event, but it was also a networking gathering of Florida's elite, complete with silent auctions and shrimp towers. A Steinway grand piano sat at the center, looking almost like an afterthought, waiting to be acknowledged. Pam arrived quietly, just after 7:15 p.m., wearing a black satin dress and simple heels. She didn't bring a +1, didn't alert the press. She hadn't been on stage in years, and she didn't plan to be tonight, unless the moment called for it. Across the room, Jackson was already in performance mode, chatting with 2 journalists. He didn't notice Pam at first. She stayed at the edge of the room, chatting with a few old acquaintances from her days in office. No one mentioned the piano. She didn't bring it up either. Then, between bites of mini crab cakes, Jackson spotted her. He didn't hesitate. He walked over, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Well, well," he said, lifting his glass. Pam turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Jackson," she said with a polite nod. "Glad you made it," he grinned. "Didn't know art fundraisers were your thing." "They are," she replied, "especially when kids benefit." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Right. Music education and all that." What he didn't know was that the stage wouldn't belong to him forever. And when it didn't, things would start to shift in a way no one saw coming. Jackson was getting closer to figuring out the difference between a Steinway and a side table when a few people laughed nervously. Pam, however, didn't react to the joke. Instead, she fixed him with a look. "Do you always talk like that at charity events?" she asked. He shrugged. "Just keeping it light. Besides, you've got a sense of humor, right?" She paused. "Sometimes." That could have been the end of it, but Jackson, fueled by wine and his own ego, wasn't done. He gestured toward the grand piano near the stage. "How about it?" he said, voice casual but with a hint of challenge. "Want to prove me wrong? Play something. Anything. Your pick." The energy in the room shifted. A few heads turned, a photographer stopped mid-shot, and even the woman overseeing the silent auction paused at her laptop. Pam glanced at the piano, then back at Jackson. "I don't play for people who want me to fail," she said quietly. That gave him pause, just enough time for her to add, "But I will play for the kids." And with that, she walked past him toward the stage. It wasn't a dramatic exit. She didn't storm off or make a scene. She just moved, with that same calm rhythm she used in the courtroom, collected, controlled. Jackson stood frozen, surprised. He hadn't expected her to say yes. He'd thought she'd laugh it off, or maybe shoot back with a witty retort. But now, she was sitting at the piano, speaking with the sound technician. The room had fallen into a hush, people gathering around slowly, some taking out their phones. It wasn't frantic, more like people sensing they were about to witness something important. Pam adjusted the bench, placed her hands in her lap, and didn't speak a word to anyone. She closed her eyes, looked down at the keys, and took a breath. Jackson, standing by the bar, watched her from a distance. His friend leaned in. "You might have messed up, man." Jackson didn't answer. He was beginning to feel something he hadn't in years, uncertainty, and she hadn't even played a note yet. For a moment, Pam sat still, her fingers hovering just above the keys. The room was completely silent now, no small feat with this crowd. No one had to announce it. The air itself had shifted. And then, soft at first, the first notes of Claire de Lune began to spill from the Steinway, like water finding its shape. At first, no one reacted. It was unexpected, too smooth, too intentional, too serious for a casual request. Some wondered if the sound technician had cued a track, but then they saw her hands moving, her body swaying gently with the music. This wasn't a party trick. This was practiced, patient, and heartbreakingly real. Jackson stood frozen, arms crossed, mouth slightly open. He couldn't place the piece at first, but the tone, melancholy, rising and falling with grace, and something else, sorrow, was familiar. No laughter now. Pam's fingers moved effortlessly, fluid but never rushed. Her eyes stayed closed. She wasn't performing. She was somewhere else entirely, somewhere only she could see. The room watched and listened in silence. Phones came out, but even the clicks of cameras felt muted. As if the room didn't want to break the spell. Jackson, remembering a night 10 years ago in San Francisco, felt exposed in a way he hadn't in years. He thought back to a small club with 20 people, his guitar slipping from his nervous hands, but a woman in the back row had swayed to the music, smiling like she could hear something others couldn't. Pam's piece slowed, drifting into a long, aching note that lingered in the air before she opened her eyes just a second too long and closed the piano lid softly. No dramatic gesture, just done. She stood, nodded faintly at the technician, and stepped off the stage. No bow. No applause seeking. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. Then, the applause began, not polite, not forced. It built from the middle of the room, growing like something boiling over. A few people stood. Then more. Almost everyone. It wasn't about politics or revenge. It was about being proven wrong in the most graceful way possible. Pam didn't smile. She simply returned to her seat and sipped her seltzer. Jackson didn't approach her. Not yet. He stayed by the bar, hand on his chin, watching. "Are you okay?" his friend asked. Jackson blinked. "I think I just got humbled." Later, during his set, Jackson took the stage with less swagger than usual. He adjusted his guitar strap, tapped the mic, and said, "I'm gonna change the set list." A few chuckles spread across the room. "No smiles," he said before playing. "When I was younger, I used to think I could size people up really quickly, knew who had what talent, what heart. Turns out I've been pretty arrogant. I owe someone an apology." The room quieted. Jackson played a stripped-down version of one of his older songs. No effects, no looping pedal, just his voice, raw with honesty. And when he finished, the applause was just as real as it had been for her. Pam didn't clap. She listened. And that was enough. The night wasn't over, and the world outside that ballroom was about to find out what had happened inside. The next morning, videos of Pam playing the piano began spreading across social media. One shaky clip filmed from behind a wine glass table had already passed 1 million views. The caption read, "Pam Bondi just silenced a room with Debussy." Twitter exploded with reactions. Some praised her. "Never had Pam Bondi playing Claire de Lune on my 2025 bingo card. But here we are. Say what you want about her politics, that was beautiful." Others were suspicious. "No way, she just pulled that out of nowhere. PR stunt. What's next? DeSantis breakdancing?" But the skeptics were drowned out by something deeper: curiosity, fascination, disbelief. A woman pigeonholed by the media had just shown the world something else: quiet grace. Jackson didn't post anything. No tweets. No sarcastic follow-up. Instead, he sat in his hotel room in Sarasota, guitar across his lap, and nothing coming out. No lyrics. No progressions. Just a feeling in his chest he couldn't name. He replayed the moment over and over. The weight of each note, the silence before it, the way the room held its breath. He thought back to something his old music teacher once told him. Real musicians don't play to be understood. They play because they understand something no one else can say out loud. For the first time in years, that made sense. Pam, meanwhile, stayed quiet. She got home the next day, greeted her dog, watered her plants, and slipped back into her routine. She wasn't interested in interviews or public appearances. She turned down requests from Good Morning America, a podcast offer from NPR, and a flattering message from a major music publication asking for a feature titled *The Secret Virtuoso*. She didn't want to be a symbol. She didn't need to be a headline. She'd already said what she needed to say in the music. But she did respond to one email, a message from a 16-year-old girl in Arizona who'd seen the video online. It said, "I'm not into politics, but I've been scared to sign up for piano class because I'm not very good. But after watching you play, I think I'll try anyway." Pam stared at the message for a long time before replying with 2 simple lines: "Thank you, and remember, the key is not to be perfect. Just be honest." Later, Jackson posted a photo on his Instagram of a blank notebook with his guitar resting beside it. The caption simply read, "Starting over." He lost a few followers who called him soft, but gained a few who thanked him for showing humility. But the biggest shift wasn't online. It was in him. A few weeks later, he performed at a small theater in Pensacola. No band, no effects, just him, a stool, and his guitar. Midway through, he paused. "I learned something recently," he told the audience. "Sometimes we're so busy trying to tear down people we disagree with, we forget they are whole human beings. And sometimes they have more to say than we ever gave them credit for." Then he did something no one expected. He sat at the venue's old upright piano, cracked his knuckles, and played *Claire de Lune*, badly. Really badly. He stopped after a few bars and laughed. Okay. I'm no Pam," he said, grinning. The audience erupted. In that moment, something real happened. A wall came down. But not just between two people. Between noise and meaning, between mockery and grace. The next week, the video of Pam's performance went viral. It was picked up by national outlets, CBS News, Rolling Stone, even The Tonight Show. Not because she was trending as a politician, but because she had shattered public assumptions about her without saying a single word. And Jackson, He never made a public statement.
He didn't need to.
But he did post a photo of an old upright piano in a small studio room with a caption, "Lessons resume Monday." He'd enrolled in private lessons in Gainesville, saying he was tired of pretending he knew it all.
Some saw it as PR cleanup. Others saw growth.
What no one could deny was that something had shifted, not just in Jackson or Pam, but in how people talked about them. For a few days, the online world stopped shouting and started listening. Pam didn't trend because she yelled.
She didn't trend for tearing anyone down.
She trended because she showed up, stayed calm, and did the one thing no one expected. She spoke through beauty. And beauty doesn't argue.
It doesn't defend itself. It just is.